Click the button and do the thing. We're live. All right, welcome everyone to WineShark Wednesday. That is I, your host, the WineShark. Hope everybody's having a wonderful summer afternoon. Well, we're almost in summer, aren't we? Technically, it's still spring, but my temperature gauge outside says otherwise. So I just actually had to bring in my plants off the porch because they were getting a little wilty. You can obviously appreciate how they feel. Hope everybody's having a wonderful time so far. Thank you for the break last week, by the way. At the end of the Scarborough Renaissance season was very busy, and being able to take last Wednesday off was delightful. So I missed you all, but I hope you guys didn't miss me too badly, if at all. So anyway, today we're going to talk about a topic that came up via email. A wonderful brief primer into wine and climate. We're going to talk a little bit about how we refer to this in the wine industry. This is probably what I would call like intermediate level knowledge, although this is going to be a very basic discussion of the topic itself. Most common wine drinkers don't necessarily need to know this, but as you start getting into wine a little bit more, you might hear some of the terms I'm using today thrown around and be interested in why that matters to your wine drinking experience. So we're going to talk about a little bit about that. Ooh, pardon me, I got an itch. Oh. Well, hello there, Ms. Donna. Greetings and salutations to you as well. So, wine and climate. This isn't about climate change, although that's a very separate topic that's very important to this. We're really just going to be talking today about some of the terms that we use to describe the growing areas that wine occurs in. As most of you know, wine is grown throughout the world in a lot of different places with a lot of different geographies and a lot of different countries. However, there are some fundamental differences about how we describe those areas. Also, you'll notice that there's a particular latitude band that wine does not grow, that grows within. Basically, we don't really have any tropical region wines, for instance, because wine vines don't grow there. Also, once we get past a certain latitude north, once it gets too cold for them to ever have a really functional growing season, they don't grow there as well. So there's this band, both in the north and the southern hemisphere, where wine grows. But that's not really an accurate way to look at it. Looking at latitude and longitude is far, far too simplistic for our purposes. The simplest we probably want to talk about is the basic concept of warm versus cool climate wines. This just is a very broad, very common way of talking about the climate a wine grape grows in. So, broadly speaking, warm climates tend to be more consistent in their temperature throughout the growing season. They have basically kind of a very shallow arc of low temperatures to high temperatures over the course of their spring, summer, and into fall. Some examples of warm climate areas would include some of the parts of California, especially in the northern and central parts of California, the southern regions in Europe, like southern Portugal, central Portugal, southern and central Spain, southern France, and southern Italy, right? We also talk about the warm climate of a lot of parts of Australia. Most of South Africa is considered a warm climate area. And in southern America, South American continent, we talk about Argentina being an example of a warm climate growing area. Okay, so these have, again, a broad, shallow kind of thing going on. So, hello there to Ms. Boswell, and hello to Mr. Carey. Great to see you guys out. So, warm climate, we see a lot of very popular wine regions that we're talking about there. Cool climates, notice that they call it warm and cool, really not hot and cold, because wine climates tend to have seasons. Cool climates tend to have seasons that have more of a sharp drop off. They have the same peaks of heat as warmer climes, but they tend to get colder as they get towards harvest. They cool off faster. So these are places in America like Oregon, Washington State, New York State. This is the northern areas of France and Italy. This is Germany, Austria, Hungary, all across the Central European area. I'd go far as all the way out to, say, Bulgaria and Georgia as well. New Zealand, as compared to Australia. New Zealand is cool. Australia is considered warm. And then just on the other side of the Andes Mountains from Argentina is Chile. So Chile is considered a cool climate region. Okay, so warm and cool simply describe that kind of overall arc of temperature throughout their season. But that is only one way of looking at it. And as I said, that's kind of the most broad. A more slightly more detailed, only slightly though, version of this will use a different nomenclature, but turn this into 3 different areas. We will talk about Mediterranean climates. So Mediterranean roughly equals warm climate. We're talking about long glowing seasons with moderate to warm temperatures. These are places that stay kind of, this is the places, people love to live because the weather's great there all year round, right? You hear about places like this, those are called Mediterranean climates. So they roughly equate to the warm climate concept. Continental climate, on the other hand, roughly equates to cool climate. Okay, this is where we have marked seasonal changes, right? We might definitely have snow during periodic ice and snow areas during their winter regions. They do get a little bit warm during the summer, but never really quite as hot as some of the Mediterranean areas. But you have, like I said, more of that sharper arc of differences and extremes of temperature. The third thing, the one that makes this area using this nomenclature differently, is maritime. Because this is when you've heard me talk about a lot, where maritime climate is all about close proximity to large bodies of waters like oceans, lakes, river estuaries, things like that. This is important because those large bodies of water moderate temperature in a different way than the necessarily purely Mediterranean or continental climes. So depending on where they are geographically, maritime climates can kind of be a hybrid of these two things. They're neither warm nor cool. They have a kind of unique sense of their own. For instance, a lot of coastal regions in California, while California is broadly considered a warm climate region, can be considered cool climates, and so ranking up with some of the coldest in the world because of their maritime influence, because they have the fog effects in the afternoon that help keep the grapes cool, and thus they give them the overall more cool climate attitude. Okay, those 3 names, Mediterranean, continental, and maritime, are still kind of just broad speak, though. There's actually a more scientific way that growers across many types of crops and even raising animals for that matter use, called the Winkler Index. Actually, the Winkler Index is specific to wine, but the Winkler Index, or a Winkler scale, or Winkler regions, you may see them referred to as, they're a classification based on heat summation. In other words, the total number of growing degree days, or GDD. Okay, growing degree days is an accumulative measure of how much heat has been absorbed by a plant specifically, although they do use this for animals as well. I'm assuming your cows out there also soaking up heat. But in the little bit of a look-see that I did when I was researching this, they actually use this across a lot of different disciplines, not just viticulture, the growing degree day concept. Okay, so think about that as a number that begins at, say, they basically break it into 5 different regions, 6 different regions. There's region 1A and 1B, and then there's regions 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? Each one of these is a cumulative degree of units of heat, either in Fahrenheit or in Celsius, depending on where you are. And the lowest levels, 1A, are the least amount of Fahrenheit units that you get. So if you get, say, between 1,500 to 2,000 Fahrenheit units over the course of your growing year, you're considered a region 1A. That's the coldest wine growing region acceptable, where you're only having very early ripening varieties of Vitis vinifera, and oftentimes hybrid grapes are actually used to make sure that you get maturity into the fruit, because you've got such a little window of time. Okay? So to give you an example of some 1A regions, now we're talking about in Argentina, which we talked about as a warm climate region, the Rio Negro region is actually considered a region 1A because it only gets about 1,100 to 1,200 GDD, growing degree days. Okay, so another one that might make a little more sense, something like is in Germany. In Germany, in the Ruhr region, the city of Kassel, they're a region 1A. They have about 1,500 GDD. So you would think Germany being north, cold climate, okay, this makes sense. But it's very interesting to see places start showing up outside that spectrum. So this is a more detailed look. Australia has effectively the most cold climate area in this kind of case when it comes to the number of growing degree days. And a lot of this is affected not just by, we talk about overall climate patterns, but simply geography, maritime nearness, etc. the actual individual weather patterns of small areas can have a big effect on overall GDD, or grape growing areas. Okay. So that being said, I mean, I thought the Winkler scale was kind of. Oh, my son has just decided to defeat me. I'm gonna see if I can move my shade here that I've been developed. Stupid thing. I tell you. Every time I turn around, the sun is thwarting me. I'm waiting to replace anything over the windows, seeing as how we're having them replaced in about 6 days. So hopefully after that's done, I'll eliminate the sun issue permanently. But for now, let me see. What does that look? Gotta wait for it to show up. No, we're gonna try something else. We're gonna do this. Thank you for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. We have technical difficulties. That's about as good as it's gonna get. Anyway, moving right along. The Winkler scale. That idea, if you're not going to see that kind of thing, by the way, based on any labeling. You're not going to see it any kind of thing regarding even on text sheets for wines, right? This is some level of knowledge past the wine itself. This very much goes into the idea of looking into geographic indications. The AOC in France, the AVA in America, the IGTs across all of them, DOPs in Spain and Portugal, things like that. Okay, whenever you're looking at those styles of places, those regions might have certain assignments to them. So how is this a practical or functional thing? Well, like I said, this is an intermediate level of knowledge. This is where you can start looking at the concept of ripeness and how winemakers in that area might make their wine styles. Remember that ripeness is the art of getting balance between acid and sugar at time of harvest and at the beginning of your winemaking process. So if you have the right levels in the fruit in the first place, you don't have to do a lot of manipulation to get the product that you want. Okay, so that is a key thing. That's one of those art meets science portions of wine where we want to make sure that the fruit is at the right level, not overly ripe, not underripe, but just right for the purpose of the wine you're making. Okay, different winemakers will harvest at different times based on personal preferences, simply because they like the way that makes their wine taste. So it's a complicated question at the very bottom of it, but it's an interesting study to find out how different areas, small pockets of different regions exist all over the place. Okay, I mean, if you even think about Southern California, for instance, the reason this email that came up that I was looking at was speaking about how in San Luis Obispo, SLO, they've actually got a 1B, or I think a 1A wine region that's right there on the coast. I mean, that's pretty Southern California, which we think is, very much Mediterranean, very much consistent weather all year round, very high temperatures in general, where the reality is this one little pocket has this weather pattern that comes off the ocean that makes it both a maritime influence and gives it a much shorter growing degree day per year number, a Winkler index. So there's your kind of primer on climate. If you guys have questions about that and want to talk more about wine's geography, learning about specific areas, we can talk a lot more about that. We can talk about how to go about them if you're interested in learning them from a wine curiosity or professional standpoint. We can also talk about when visiting places, how to get different opportunities to see some different wine climates, all within, say, an easy drive, right? But so with that said, we're going to go ahead and move on to the quiz. Let's see, I've got questions here. Oh, say welcome back to Betty and Mark. Welcome back from Alaska. Definitely not a wine growing region. Pretty sure that I'm pretty sure they're off the Winkler's index completely. So, but found out about freezing point of vodka. That's how you do it. So Barbara Boswell asks, did you hear about the newest AVA in the California Sonoma's North Coast? I did not. They're adding AVAs a lot. In fact, the one I heard about actually today is actually east of the Lodi-Stockton area and is actually just a little bit west of the Sierra Nevada Foothills AVA. So actually I heard about one on the eastern side of the state. I did not hear about one in the north, but that's very cool. They're constantly adding new ones. Well, not constantly. I mean, probably a couple to five get done about every year. And remember that adding an AVA is not just climatic importance. It also has to do with unique and specific soil types and an overall picture of, because you grow here, it tastes different. And that's a really cool thing. I think it's very empowering for winemakers to get their own specific places. It's one of the very basic levels of the quality pyramid that we tend to use, right? So we go from, wine of the country to wine of a region to wine of a specific place to wine of a specific vineyard. And while that's not always a 100% accurate scale, it's certainly a good way to try wine that has different flavors. So I will definitely have to check out the new Sonoma AVA for sure. So, Alaska's in the 0A region. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they are in that definite off the map area, John. You're right. Alaska's good for other things, just wine's not being one of them. Okay, so wine quiz. Let's see what we got here. Let's reach into our little box here and pull out today's wine quiz question. So the wine quiz questions are from a game called Wine Trivia, called basically Wine Wars, and they've got 5 different categories of question. We've got vine to vino, the graposphere, wine cellar, wine and food, and court culture. So vine to vino is all about growing grapes, making of the wines, and the worldwide production thereof. Graposphere is about grape varieties and their geography, and the wines that are made from them. Wine cellar is about selecting, storing, and how to taste wine. Wine and food, of course, is about cooking with it, food and pairing of it, and serving of it. And then finally, there's court culture, which is wine, people, business, arts, sciences, and trivia. So we'll see if we can how your favorite local sommelier does on the quiz today. So, question number 1. So I've got a couple of true falses here. These are boring. These are always kind of broad. All right, here we go. True false. The fewer grapes a grapevine grows, the more likely flavors will be concentrated to make a quality wine. The answer is, this is where I would be pedantic. The answer to that is false. It's not about how many they grow, it's how many you let live on them. You prune back to leave less fruit. If a vine has less fruit overall through the growing season, it concentrates flavors. So winemakers or vineyard managers are very often cutting and throwing away bunches of fruit to keep that wine taste concentrated. So the answer they're looking for is true, but once again, their query is stated poorly. Yes, the answer is true. So, yeah. Smaller amount of grapes per number of clusters per vine equals good quality. Of course, remember, it does also reduce your yield. All right, true or false? The distinctive aromas of Viognier come from fully ripened grapes, foretold on the bottle as relatively high alcohol levels. The distinctive aromas of Viognier come from fully ripened grapes, foretold as relatively high alcohol levels. Okay, so what they're saying is the alcohol by volume is high because ripe grapes have higher sugar levels and therefore can have higher ABV. I was not familiar with the idea that it was about fully ripening. I didn't realize that Viognier, I do know that it is an aromatic white and that it has a definitely distinct aroma, but I didn't know that it might be related. So I'm going to guess at this one, but I'm going to guess that it's true. They say true. So high alcohol levels, but guys, don't use that as a predictor. That's a dangerous slippery slope to get down. Reason being, while alcohol does come from fermentation of sugars, your ripeness level, you can have fully ripe grapes that you arrest fermentation, you stop the process, you end up with a lower ABV and a higher residual sugar, and guess what? The ABV doesn't tell you that the fact that the grapes were fully ripe. So be careful. All right. Lastly, what does OWC indicate in a wine auction catalog? No idea, having never participated in a wine auction. OWC, that obviously stands for Operational Wine Certificate, or Our Wines Creative, or maybe it's Only Wine Comes when you order this thing. Let's see what it says. Bottles in their original wooden cases. Snazzy. I always like those too. They're fun to collect when you first get into wine. So I've got one sitting up there from Steel Winery that I really like. So, all right, true or false? In addition to waste and potential injury, An out-of-control opening of sparkling wine can result in prematurely flat fizz. Oh, wow. So they're saying if you open your bottle of fizzy incorrectly, boy, it can be dangerous. But also flattens your wine. Answer to that is true. If you go and saber your wine and let it get all over the place, if you're not careful, or if you shake the bottle up like a Formula One driver on a podium and you get wine splashed all over the place, yes, it will go flat faster. Yeah, answer is true. Potentially unsafe. Yeah, but it's so much fun. All right, which state leads the others in wine consumption? Texas, Illinois, or Florida? So, Texas, Illinois, or Florida? Interesting, because all fairly of the same population, I believe. But let's go ahead and guess our state. We're right here. Let's guess Texas. This is Florida, followed by Texas and Illinois. So maybe their tourist industry is driving that, and or Florida man is drinking more wine than I see when I get reported on the news. So 3 for 5 today. Not so hot. So definitely some good things. Original wooden case. Learned something new because of our wine quiz. I think that's very cool. Although which state consumes a lot is, I don't know when this was made. I don't know how accurate that data would be, so don't quote me on that when you guys show off at a party all your amazing wine knowledge that you learned from me, or from my game at least. All right, last, not least, we have a tie-in. We're going to do the grocery store grab, and then the grocery store grab. We have the premise here, of course, is to help get the best value per dollar for wines found at non-specialty and non-big box retailers. We're looking at the general wine world out there, and if you don't have access to a fine wine store or a great big box liquor store that can give you selections from amazing places all over the world, if you're kind of part of in the mainstream and more just out of convenience, if you shop for wine while you're at the grocery store doing other things, we're going to talk about the wines that you're very likely to see there. They tend to be bigger market wines. They tend to be less expensive overall, but they're still a great concept for drinking daily drink wines. So we're going to talk about label focus first. We really want to know what's on the label. Now, this case, by the way, I did not select this for the label. I selected it to match the climate thing. However, it's not a bad label overall. The bottle of wine is called Relax Riesling. Looks like this. A stunningly blue little bottle from Germany. Very much targeting the American market with very simplistic labeling. They're getting away from using German terminology on the front label at all, or on the bottle anywhere for that matter, because unfortunately, German wine can be very intimidating because it's not one of the languages that most United States kids learn as one of the school languages. That tends to fall largely in Spanish and French and the Romance languages. So instead, they avoid that completely, and they do this very modern, very slick, and quite frankly, very pretty looking bottle. But the label focus of this is actually pretty darn amazing. For being a $12 bottle, and sometimes I've seen it as low as I think 8 or 9, this little bottle of Riesling packs a lot away for our purposes of wine label stuff. So there's nothing on the front except it's Relax and Riesling. So it's a brand and a grape. No place yet. But on the back of the bottle, it says Relax Riesling is fermented slightly dry with a wonderfully fruity bouquet and intense flavors of apples and peaches, with just a hint of citrus. The natural acidity gives this wine a perfect balance that is refreshingly crisp and leaves your mouth watering. A perfect party wine, or can be enjoyed with a variety of foods from seafood and poultry to Asian dishes and fresh salads. Serve chilled. Then there's a diagram between dry and sweet and showing you that this is a medium sweet wine. Then if you finally read down through here, it says Riesling Qualitätswein Mosel. So it actually tells you that it's from the Mosel region, but they're not staking their reputation on it being a Mosel Riesling, because to them, this particular market, they're likely to assume that you don't know. They're very much aiming at a new to wine drinking market, but that is one of the best labels I've seen in a long time. That description is very practical. It is very accurate in wine terms. They don't bother with any marketing speak whatsoever. They've even got food recommendations here that aren't awful. I mean, seafood and poultry is kind of a broad thing, right? I mean, seafood can mean anything from a crab cake to a shrimp gumbo, and they have very different flavor profiles. But Asian dishes, again, a little bit broad. and fresh salads. But at least they're trying. And they're giving you an indicator of serving it chilled, and they've got that cool little scale right here that just shows you where in between dry and sweet am I. Because it says it fermented slightly dry, right? So they took a little bit of it down. Now, how does it taste? Of course, our next question comes down to the best part, which is, what does this thing taste like? And how do we do? We usually ask 3 questions. Is it well executed? Is it on style? Is it worth the price tag? So, on the nose, it's got very much the green apple, pear. I see where they're a little hint of citrus. It's got like an orange blossom water thing going. I would even also say that it's got that tiny faint hint. They've muted the hints of TDN, of what is it, trihydrodinaphthalene, and that is a interesting thing, because that smell, that kind of rubber/diesel smell, could be off-putting for a lot of people. They've basically tamped that down to keep that under control so that they're not offending new to wine drinking palates. But on the nose, we see it's got that fresh white tree fruits, apricot, pear, green apple. And yeah, all over the palate acidity, just a little hint of gentle mouth-watering that is well balanced with a fruit-forward, nicely sweet, Honeycrisp apple, and a little tiny hint of maybe of actual honey. It tastes almost like a floral type of honey in there, but crisp, semi-sweet, not that bracing sharp acidity, just enough to be mouth-watering, refreshing. Still a little sweeter. This is a perfect example of a mid-sweet style of an off-dry. So this is a great approachable wine for people who are coming out of the sweet world. It's not going to do a lot for wine drinkers who think all Rieslings are sweet. They're going to taste this and go, "Yep, that's sweet." Right, that's fine. This is one of those, we got to teach them that what off-dry means. That the fact that semi-sweet angle is a narrow band, and if they like dry wines, they don't want sweet stuff. This still isn't the choice for them. However, this is, Riesling does come in dry styles. This just isn't one of them. So, but honestly, I think this is where Riesling's niche really needs to be, because it helps get people out of Moscato level, higher sugar sweet wines when they're early in their journey, and when they want to learn about drier wines. This is a good stepping stone. Nothing wrong with drinking sweet wines, but if you are on a transition, I'm not going to take you from 0 to 60, in 2.3 seconds. I'm going to gradually get you over from here to there. So, although actually that would be worse. It would go from, we wouldn't take you from 100 to 0. We'd take you to 100 down to 35. And in that case, we'd be referring to grams per liter of sugar. So yeah, Florida. A lot of retirees in Florida. Everybody said Florida. Yeah, so good call on you guys. You guys are right. I mean, I think tourist industry, and I think it's Florida, man. And definitely has something to do with gators. I mean, there's no doubt about it. So let's see. Barb's drinking Stressed Vines from Sonoma Coast Rosé. Not a grocery store grab, but it was a boutique winery, but very refreshing. Very nice. And giving flavor notes is good. Love that label. Yeah, Stressed Vines, an interesting name too, because that's talks about how wine vines, when under stress, meaning when they're searching for water, they tend to produce a higher quality product. So that's a little wine insider nickname there, which I think is pretty awesome. Alrighty, well, that is a perfect example. Oh, by the way, why did this? I forgot to include. Why did I choose this wine? Because it tied into the theme. Because this is a great example where Germany and the Mosel are cold climate wines. So just because we're in America, you have access to wines from across the world, but you can easily try this example of a cool climate wine where ripening takes place over a very brief period. And in fact, German wine labels have an entire series of technical terms that they use on the labels to determine the levels of ripeness. But remember, don't really mistake ripeness for end level sweetness. You can do things with fermentation that allow you to keep sugars or turn them into alcohol as you see fit. So just because it was riper in the scale doesn't always mean it was sweeter. Okay. But all right, with that, I see no more questions. Everybody's doing great. Well, thank you everybody for your questions and your participation tonight. We're now getting visited right now by a spotty menace, who's decided that it's now his time to do awesome things and drink wine. But I hope you guys are enjoying the show. For those of you who are here local in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, specifically the Fort Worth area, we will be hosting shows, wine tastings, my summer wine specials, the whole wine series down at the Sleeping Panther in downtown Fort Worth. From 4 to 6 every Sunday, we'll host a 5-wine pairing down there in the awesome Flatiron building on 1000 South Houston Street. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really, really excited to be partnering with the Sleeping Panther. Tickets are on sale now on Eventbrite. You can also, and by the way, the recurring tickets are on sale. So because this gig is nice and regular, we have got tickets on sale for the next 10 weeks. I will be gone one of those, but basically you can buy tickets from now until the end of August right now. So if you've got a weekend you want to get it ahead in advance, get your tickets secured, go right there. We've got general admission tickets on right now. After I check the venue out for the first couple of shows, we may also be offering options for a VIP experience where we've got basically the owner's table, which is a special little elevated booth and such, for something cool if you want to do something cool, because, well, it's going to be so cool. So we definitely hope you guys will join us if more one, and expect that we'll probably be doing monthly themes. Maybe 2 weeks. I haven't decided how to communicate what the wine themes are, but I'm not sure it's as important as just saying, hey, we're doing wine tasting. So, for instance, here in June, the first 2 shows on the 19th and the 26th will be the same show. Then perhaps throughout July, I'll just have the same wines. But I don't know. We're also looking to see whether we can partner with some wineries and maybe sponsor some of the shows, and see what we can do in that particular fashion. But it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm ridiculously excited about it, and I hope you guys will show us there too. So, all right, guys. Well, until next time, I will see you here online. I have been your Wine Shark. Cheers. And this is a great wine. Where I think this wine might just be dinner because, well, it's so easy to drink, so good.